How's everybody doing today? Good. Hey, it's report day and get to visit with the media, practice one tomorrow. Everybody in college football associated with it, whether it's the media, coaches, players, support groups, is excited. It's fun to continue the journey. Tomorrow's not the start. Tomorrow is the beginning of the fourth quarter, the way we break it up. This season started 7 months ago when we came back from Christmas break, and we started in January. And so tomorrow's not the start. Tomorrow is just the end of the end in terms of August, the training camp portion of it coming off of summer. We're going to continue to build. And I'm not going to say start, but continue to build the foundation of this program, the culture of this program, be one of the most important things we do in year one. I've said it multiple times. I like where we're at right now, not where we need to be, but I do believe we've got some guys and their buy-in factor has increased over the last couple months, really, in this summer. We've made really good strides physically since, I would just say, May 1st, to be very general there, coming out of spring ball. A lot of strides over the summer, some body transformations, which creates confidence. And the culture right now is the most important thing we do. How we do anything is how we do everything. And so the way we've gone about academics, the way we've gone about strength and conditioning, all those kind of things lead up to football. And now it's football time, and we get to talk about that. So with that, I'm going to go ahead and I'm just going to give you some roster updates, some player updates, and then open it up for any questions, okay? So talk about some roster updates in terms of additions. I'm going to talk about grad transfers. We brought in 4 grad transfers, and I haven't talked much about them, but I'm going to tell you Zach McPherson, Evan Rambo, Armand Shine, and R.J. Turner, all 4 of those guys are going to be in major competition for roles right out of the gate. Those 4, the best thing I can say about them right now, outside of their talent or their physical ability, is the demeanor that they've come into our program with since the beginning of June to add to this culture. They've all come from good programs, I believe, that are accountable and disciplined, and they have added to our guys, and I'm proud of those 4. Kosai Eldridge is a junior college linebacker from Kilgore. He's 3 for 3. Denton, Texas. Kosai is going to be right in the mix at linebacker. He can play outside, he can play inside, and so we'll see right where he fits best with the rest of our linebackers. But he's added about 12 pounds over the summer, and great kid on top of that. One that comes from a non-scholarship grad transfer is Jackson Tyner. Jackson's a quarterback from Rice. We needed a little bit more depth in the quarterback room. He's played games at Rice. He's mature. He's already graduated, and he came here for his last semester of college, and this will be a great experience for him. Some updates in terms of the injuries. Terrence Steele and Lonzel Gilmore are kind of on the same. Terrence had an upper body injury early in summer. Those guys are going to be limited. I would say a lot more limited at the beginning of training camp, working into a limited role. We'll see right where those guys are at, have more updates on them towards the end of the month. Lonzel's an injury from the end of spring. Seth Collins was injured in spring with the collarbone. Seth, that's a collarbone injury that's a little bit more extreme than we thought as the summer's gone. Seth's going to be out for an extended amount of time. I'm not sure how long. That thing has had a hard time healing. Seth has done everything he can and done a tremendous job, very dedicated in his rehab, but he's going to be out for an extended amount of time, and I don't have a timeline outside of that. Christian Taylor, John Scott, both Christian with his knee injury and John with the accident in the spring. Those guys are out this year. I think we've kind of talked about that. And then 2 guys that will be limited as we start practice but should be full fairly quickly in practice is Sterling Galvin and Tyler Carr, both kind of injuries that we're managing here at the beginning of training camp but should be full swing, I'd say, here in a short time. Last but certainly not least, the only guy that is not here is that we have signed Alante Brown. Alante's the running back from Chicago, dealing with some eligibility issues. I'll have an update for you a little bit maybe next week, next time I meet with the media. So I'll give you a little bit more there. Don't have much more than that today. So those are the kind of the major updates in terms of the roster. And so with that, let me go ahead and open up and we'll talk some ball. Okay. Don, you want to start us off?
What is Maverick McIver's progress from his injury, and what do you expect from him early on?
Good progress. Been going through the whole summer. We will, I would just say, keep an eye on his amount of reps at the beginning of training camp. Drew, our trainer, and Coach Yost will just manage him at the beginning of training camp, just in terms of overage, making sure we're not putting too many reps on him at the beginning. Clear, full speed, here we go. It's just amount of how many reps he's going to take in terms of that knee getting him back.
Hey, Coach, could you discuss who's in the mix in terms of the center position?
Yeah. The center position is one that you need multiple. You need more than one. Dawson Deaton's going to start there tomorrow. I don't know if he'll finish there. He may. But he'll start there when we go out because somebody's got to start there. But I think you got multiple guys. Will, Clayton. I'm going to see if Jack Anderson can play a little center. Could be a 9-1-1 situation. But the thing that I believe in, just like defensive backs, you have to cross-train your O-linemen. Your inside guys, your guards and centers got to be able to play both spots. You got to have multiple snappers, in my opinion. We do that at the beginning of practice when we do center quarterback exchange. And then our tackles, the ability to play left and right, like I've talked to you guys about in the spring. But we believe in that. We practice that. There'll be several guys there in that mix.
You mentioned Jack just here, and you mentioned Jack possibly that being his future at the next level back at Big 12 Media Day. What about his game do you like that you think he could play center or do a good job of center?
Jack could play all three spots inside, to be honest with you, and he could play a tight end and short yardage goal line.
Is that in the mix?
I'm not going to tell you.
Hey, Coach. Since December 1st when you took over back here, there's a lot, you have to change whenever you take over a program. You've talked about wanting to instill so much on the field and off the field. What's the biggest change you've seen both in yourself as a coach and this team since you've taken over?
And myself? The biggest change, that's the best question I've been asked all summer. Let me pause for a second. What's the biggest question in myself since we took over in December?
Self-coach?
Biggest change.
And the team?
The team answer is a little bit easier for me. The biggest change has just been the buy-in. And you go from the very first time you get to talk to them, December the 1st, the night before your press conference, where there's zero buy-in, right? Which that's the process. It starts like that. And that takes time. And so that's the biggest thing. And we're not where we need to be. I just mentioned that. But the players, the work, the effort, just the accountability is starting to be where it needs to be, where we need to head. Now it becomes player accountability, which is horizontal leadership to me. It's players leading players. That has to continue to increase through training camp, through the season, through our tenure here, in my opinion, to go from good to great. I still don't know the answer about me losing hair on top. Can't be a visor guy anymore, apparently. Got to go ball cap in Lubbock. Quit laughing, TP. Go ahead.
Qualities about programs that you do respect?
I think it's just programs that you would already have a familiar knowledge with, whether they're guys that we know or we've worked with in the past or we know the perception of those programs. I'm talking about accountability, toughness, how do they lift weights, how do they practice, the brand of football they're coming from. I don't know James Franklin well, but I know what they do in the weight room, okay, and I know how they play on TV, okay. I know Kyle Whittingham, very, very good at Utah, recruited Armand on the front end of this. We had connections with all 4 guys, and that's kind of how recruiting goes. It's always how recruiting goes. I coached Zach's brother at New Mexico, okay? Evan, the D coordinator at Cal is Tim DeRuiter, a really good friend of mine, but we've got DB coach there that coached with our DB coach. We had connections there. Once the guy goes into the portal, then you call on those connections. R.J. Turner, Steve Farmer recruited him to Louisiana Monroe on the front end. And then I mentioned Armand. So those are things that I know. Armand Shine's lifted weights, and he's been in tough physical practice. I've watched Utah practice on spring break over the years. And so those are examples of programs that you respect, because I want them to come in and add to our culture. I don't want them to subtract from our culture, okay? They're coming in for 1 semester. A couple of those guys are coming in for 2 years because they're juniors, Zach and Evan, when you talk about how much time they have left. But when they come into your program, you want them to validate some of the things that you're doing as well as add to that culture. And all 4 of those guys have been tremendous.
Coach, it's the 150th anniversary of college football. One of the greatest games 50 years ago was Texas-Arkansas. How has the game changed since that time, and how proud does it make you part of the game of college football?
It's, I think it's a privilege to coach, not just at Texas Tech, but to be a college football coach. You got a chance to invest in kids' lives, mentor them, see their lives change. Being a lot of them, or some of them, are first-generation college graduates, what they can do, how they become fathers and husbands and get jobs. Those are tremendous intrinsic values, rewards that we get as coaches. To be real blunt, the challenge of Saturdays, the passion of Saturdays, the pageantry of college football, growing up around it for me, as a young kid, going to games as a little kid, to getting a chance to play college football. And then it's been a way for me, a way of life. It's given me jobs and a scholarship and a degree. It's done so much for Matt Wells. It's the ability for me to now give back to that game. To me, if you respect the game and you give so much to the game will give twice as much back. And that's things that we talk to our players about, is respecting the game. And I use it more in terms of the way you prepare, the discipline, the way you practice, the way you carry yourself off the field and in the community. And this game will give so much more back to you. I wasn't around, and I didn't know about the Texas Tech Arkansas game you talked about. That was a long time ago. You were here? All right. That was a minute ago.
Matt,
Yes,
following
sir.
up on a couple of the personnel things that you mentioned, you said Terrence being down for a while. What does that mean for your tackle positions? Does Travis stay where he was in the spring, or does
Travis
he go
will still
back?
play both. Weston Wright will move in there. Troy Bradshaw. See where those guys, who's better at right, who's better at left. Travis Bruffy could play either one.
Can you be any more specific on what Terrence did? You said
No.
upper body injury.
Upper body injury,
And what was Lonzel's injury?
bicep. He did that in spring.
Okay. And with Seth being down for a while, who will you kind of roll out there with tomorrow with your first receivers, those inside and outside guys?
I think the outside, your inside guys are Rigdon and Mannix. We moved Xavier Martin there. The outside guys, every one of them are going to roll through. The ones aren't the ones until Coach Filani says those are my starters. But in this offense, and I've said it, we're going to play 4 at minimum. We'll play 4 outside receivers at minimum every game. We may play 5. We'll play at minimum 2 inside receivers, may play 3 if they can help us win. We'll play at minimum 2 tight ends. We'll play at minimum 2 running backs, maybe 3 running backs. Over the years, the last couple years, I can give you examples just coming from Utah State. 2 years ago, we only played 2 slots. Last year, we had 3 that played very well. But as fast as we're going to play, there's going to be a lot of skill guys playing. No, 2 each. We'll play 2 tight. We won't play 1 tight end 95 plays a game.
Coach, could you update us on TJ Vassar and his health and progress over the summer?
Yeah, fine. Been full all summer. He's strong. TJ's got a bright future. You know, TJ continues to refine his game. I think the sky's the limit for him. When I say refine his game, it's all route running, be very detailed. Receiving's an art. The more detailed he becomes in and out of his breaks, and for a 6'6" kid, that's one of the most difficult things for any kid. That's 6'6". But TJ's got tremendous ball skills, great hands, and I think he's learning right now how to be a really dedicated college player. And I'm proud of TJ. He's come a long ways over the summer, really over the last 3 or 4 months. But I'm really proud of him, and he continues that progression in terms of how to practice and how to prepare. TJ will be one of the better wideouts in this league.
And then could you see an expanded role or trying to find a way to get Jet Duffy on the field, maybe beyond a quarterback position if that's not available to him?
Haven't talked much about that.
And then McLean Mannix, can you talk about what you've seen from him so far since he's been here over the summer and what you're looking for from him?
Yeah, so he has really trimmed his body down. I mean, he's a lot more leaner. He's muscular, but he's leaned. He's leaned out since spring ball's ended. That kid, I mean, he eats right. Nutrition's important to him. He's done a nice job with Coach Scholes and our staff, but that's a guy you've seen a body change really over the last 3 months. He's worked really hard. Proud of him.
Coach, coming into going out of spring practice, going into the summer, you gave your team a message, things you wanted them to do, things you wanted them to work on, things they needed to do as a team before they got to this date. I realize you've seen them for about 5 minutes at this point today. Where do they stand in following those directions over the offseason? How would you grade them out on that?
Well, you have individual goals and changing their body and weight goals and all those strength goals, and I think we made progress on a lot of them. There's a lot of guys that change bodies. I think the real answer to some of the chemistry and the togetherness and the things that you hope to create over the summer, we won't have answers until training camp, because training camp's part of that. And so I think the things that we talked about going into the summer, it's probably today's not the evaluation day of that.
And what are you most looking forward to other than actually finally getting to coach these guys full on, getting everything going into for the beginning of fall practice?
Can you say that?
Like, what are you looking forward to most getting, other than just being the coach of these guys? What are you looking forward to most going into these fall practices? What are you looking for this team? What are you looking to get out of them, I guess might be a way to describe it, but with regards to the excitement level for you, and I hate to use that word, but the actual event of getting to coach these guys.
Yeah. Well, I think you've got multiple things in training camp that you're trying to accomplish. You are, number one, you're talking about how's the O-line going to shake out? Where's the depth? Where's the certain position battles you have? Who's the combo DBs that can play multiple spots? You've got all those position battles going on. You have a team chemistry element that has to be developed in camp. That is an extenuation of the summer that has to continue. There's a camaraderie and a chemistry that is extremely important. There's a toughness factor coming out of training camp in terms of the heat. Your ability to, the heat capacity, how much can you play with, how much do you train in. I've got to come out of it very fresh. That's a fine line to be ready for August 31st. It's going to be 170 degrees on that turf, legit. And I'm not exaggerating it. I may be underselling that. It's going to be hot. We'll be ready for it. Our guys will be Texas tough on August 31st, but I got to make sure they're fresh. And so that's a fine line as a coach. That's a tough juggling act, and got to monitor that during camp. But it's always the ability to try to be as healthy as you can and get to the fight with your best players and get them as healthy as you can. But there's a toughness and a physicality that you have to establish at certain points in camp, and we'll certainly do that.
Coach, you mentioned the use of, over here, the camera on the shoulder.
Sorry.
The multiple tight ends. How do you see that shaking out? How are those guys competing there? Maybe go over some guys you've liked at that position. And also, how difficult has that transition been with coming into a place where we really haven't seen the tight end position, and you didn't have traditional tight ends to work with when you showed up?
Well, there's a couple of them that were here last year, maybe not used in that specific role, but just kind of talk maybe about all four of them, really. Dante Thompson, I mean, he weighed 216 pounds when we were out there practicing on the practice field at the end of spring. He's up to almost right at 240. It's a different guy blocking. Simon Gonzalez, our true freshman that came in, he had no clue if that football was blown up with air, stuffed with feathers in the month of March. He had no idea. Now he's got a little bit of an idea. He's changed his body. He'll be in that mix. Tyler Carr's a tough kid. I love Tyler. He's a great leader. He'll be a little limited early in camp, but again, another guy there. And then the fourth guy that just came is Travis Kuntz, the junior college tight end, and the ability for him to learn and function in this offense will be probably the biggest key for him, and what kind of role he earns in training camp, if it's a minimal role or is it pretty much maximized. And he plays 30 snaps a game. That'll be how quick he can pick our stuff up, because he hasn't practiced yet. So those will be your four candidates.
Coach, what's the message to the freshmen going into tomorrow, and what position groups do you foresee the most opening for a freshman to go in and earn a spot?
Ever since I've been a head coach the last 6 years, we have played somewhere between 3 to 6 true freshmen every year. Some you kind of got a pretty good idea about. There's others that are going to be surprises in camp. And our message, my message to our staff, just like it is to our strength staff in the offseason, is we coach every one of them. We're going to coach every one of them, hold them to the same expectations and the same standards. But there are some guys that I think are going to be close. I'm not going to name anybody individually today. We'll start talking about them next week a little bit. But it's a freshman class in some spots, mainly, potentially linebacker, just because we're thin there. Those guys are going to get a little bit more early reps. The freshman receivers will, the freshman quarterback will. We've got some freshman DBs that are very talented. Every one of those guys are going to be getting reps with the 2s and the 3s, and they're going to earn their way up. And so we'll give every freshman a chance to play.